Welcome to the IFIC Foundation Health Professional Webcast, featuring the 2016 IFIC Foundation Food and Health Survey, Food Decision 2016. I'm Marianne Smith-Edge, Senior Advisor for IFIC and its foundation. The IFIC Foundation mission is to effectively communicate science-based information on health, nutrition, and food safety for the public good. We are primarily supported by the broad-based food, beverage, and ag industries. At the end of the webcast today, you will be able to explain the variety of influences on consumers' purchasing decisions, identify barriers preventing consumers to taking control over their health, describe areas of misinformation, confusion, and lack of understanding related to nutrition and health, and distinguish ways to improve food and health communications to empower consumers to take control of their diets, physical activity, and weight. I will now have my fellow IFIC colleagues and registered dietitians to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Liz Sanders, Associate Director of Nutrition.
Hi, Sarah Romanski, Director of Nutrition Communications.
Hi, Chris Sully, Director of Nutrition Communications.
Thank you all. This report presents the results of our online survey of over 1,000 Americans ages 18 to 80. 2016 marks the 11th edition of the Food and Health Survey, allowing for trend analysis for many of the questions. Fielding took place during mid-March, and the average duration was 29 minutes. The results were weighed to ensure that they are reflective of the American population, ages 18 to 80, based on the 2015 current population survey. The results are weighed specifically by age, education, gender, race, ethnicity, and region. The subgroups were reported for age, education, income, gender, those with and without children under the age of 18, BMI, and ratings of their own health. Additional analysis and subgroups are also included throughout the report. The survey was conducted by Greenwald and Associates of Washington, D.C., using the Research Now online consumer panel. 2016 was a fascinating year for the Food and Health Survey. We found evidence of many shifting trends in the food and nutrition landscape. This webcast will cover the highlights related to nutrition, health, and sustainable food production. Some of the key findings include consumers and health professionals have different views on what healthy means. Registered dietitians are a top trusted source for nutrition and food safety information. Americans have changed their opinions on the helpfulness of certain nutrients. Media headlines and family and friends are the primary drivers of this change. And sustainability is growing in importance as a factor influencing purchasing decisions. The 2016 Food and Health Survey delves into the complex patchwork of influencers and information sources that affect Americans' food-related decisions. Our findings show that health status, gender, income, education, and age may influence Americans' view on the foods they eat. Even though the information sources and influencers that affect how Americans eat have shifted over the years, some factors remain constant. For the past 11 years, taste, price, and healthfulness continue to be the biggest drivers of food purchasing decisions for 3/4 of the population. The number of Americans citing sustainability as a top factor influencing food purchasing decisions increased significantly this year, 41% versus 35% in 2015. Americans use several different pieces of packaging information to help them decide what food or beverage to purchase or eat. When presented with a list of packaging information and asked to select all that apply, expiration date always tops the list. 7 in 10 respondents report looking at the expiration date, while almost half look at the nutrition fact panel and the ingredient list. As you can see, brand name, cooking instruction, preparation time, and calories and other information all made significant jumps in importance this year versus 2015. Documentaries, articles, and books about nutrition and the food system have become increasingly common as food conversations have become more prevalent in the mainstream media. Almost 4 in 10 have read or seen something in the last year that examined the food system and or commonly held beliefs about diet. Those most likely to have viewed or read this type of information are college graduates, higher income, under the age of 50, or in better health. However, almost 6 in 10 reported not having read or seen something that examined the food system. Out of respondents who said they participated in those activities, more than half report changing their food purchasing behavior or engaging their friends and family in a conversation about the topic. Women are more likely to change their food purchasing behavior based on what they've read or seen, as well as those not confident in the safety of the food supply. Registered dietitian, nutritionalists, personal health care professionals, and the U.S. government agencies are viewed by consumers as the 3 most trusted sources for providing accurate information on food safety and types of food to eat, with the registered dietitians, nutritionists at the top of the list. Specifically, trust in the U.S. government went up this year for both topics. We saw an 11% increase for food safety and a 10% increase for types of food you should be eating. This is notable considering that this year's survey included new additional response options. To delve deeper into the trust factor, we found that consumers are more likely to trust the safety of their food when produced within this country or bought from a local restaurant. Local equals trustworthy in the eyes of the consumer. And despite the surge in online purchasing, buying in person was significantly viewed as more trustworthy. Seeking food or nutrition advice from celebrities, especially doctors, were viewed trustworthy by only about a third of the population, while trusting politicians, whether local or nationally, were at a low 10% trust factor. I will now turn it over to Liz Sanders.
Thanks, Marianne. Each year, the Food and Health Survey provides a baseline on Americans' healthy eating and lifestyle behaviors. This year, we widened our scope to investigate consumers' definition of the terms natural and healthy when applied to food. Overall, Americans typically characterize their health as good, very good, or excellent. When asked how they would describe their health, only about 10% said their health was fair, while a mere 2% said that they were in poor health. Nearly 60% described their health as very good or excellent. We saw that college grads, those with higher incomes, lower BMIs, and those who spent over 15 minutes eating dinner were more likely to describe their health as very good or excellent. 3/4 of those who were obese described themselves to be in good health or better. This suggests that weight status, specifically when it is determined by BMI, may not significantly affect how people perceive their health status. Healthy is a term that comes up so frequently in the food dialogue, but little research has been done to determine how consumers define healthy as it applies to food or eating patterns. We gave respondents the open-ended question, how do you define a healthy food, and sorted the responses into buckets based on recurring themes. We found that most common theme was that a healthy food did not contain or had low levels of certain components like fat or sugar. The second most popular theme, comprising about 18% of responses, was that a healthy food, in a general sense, is good for you and your body. This was followed closely by contains healthy components like vitamins, minerals, protein, and unsaturated fats. We prompted half of our survey participants to answer a similar open-ended question regarding healthy eating style. Responses were once again grouped according to recurring themes. The top attribute of a healthy eating style, according to open-ended responses, was moderation of serving size and portions. This theme came up in 26% of responses, followed closely by includes certain foods that I define as healthy and includes the right mix of foods or a variety of different foods. Over half of our survey participants received a list of potential attributes of a healthy eating style to choose from and were asked to pick 3. The most popular response, with 51% of respondents highlighting it as one of their top 3 attributes, was that a healthy eating style includes the right mix of different foods. College grads were more likely to include this option than others. This was followed by limited or no artificial ingredients, with 41% including that option in their top 3. We compared the open-ended and closed-ended responses to the question, how do you define a healthy eating style, and found some interesting differences. The right mix of different foods was a top response in both the open-ended and closed-ended version of this question. Though limited or no artificial ingredients was a top attribute of a healthy eating style for the respondents who received the closed-ended question, this theme only came up in about 2% of the open-ended definitions for healthy eating style. So while limited or no artificial ingredients was a popular attribute of healthy eating style when it was part of an aided response, it was not top of mind for the unaided definition. There's been a large amount of buzz around definitions of the term natural and how it applies to food. When asked to provide an open-ended response of the definition of natural, about 30% of consumers define natural foods as having no preservatives or additives. About 20% of definitions included the theme that natural ingredients were taken straight from nature or grown rather than manufactured. The third most popular theme included in these definitions was that natural foods have no artificial ingredients or flavors. On a whole, Americans are making decisions that add up to healthier lifestyles. Over the past year, we found that 80% of Americans report trying to eat more fruits or vegetables and making small changes to achieve an overall healthier diet. Women, those with higher incomes, and those who report being in better health are more likely to be practicing healthy eating behaviors across the board. Interestingly, we found that those people between the ages of 35 and 80 were more likely to be practicing healthy behaviors than millennials. On average, people were participating in about 6 out of 10 of these healthy eating behaviors. This year, we dug a little deeper to find out why Americans were deciding to participate in these healthy eating behaviors. For those that had made at least one of the behavior changes in the past year, we asked which of the following motivated them to make that change. Weight loss was the top motivator, followed closely by protection of long-term health. Those who had been diagnosed with a health condition or noticed a change in their physical appearance made the largest number of changes across the board. Similar to previous years, 8 out of 10 Americans are trying to lose or maintain their weight. Should also be noted that over a third of Americans are trying to lose 10 pounds or more. With so many Americans trying to lose or maintain weight, it's also helpful to understand what they're trying to do to achieve weight maintenance. Most reported that they were likely to be more active or spend more time exercising. Nearly 3/4 also reported that they were at least somewhat likely to eat smaller portions than they do now or limit specific types of foods or food groups. Similarly to the healthy eating behaviors on the previous slide, the groups more likely to be practicing weight management included those who were older, college grads, and women. Similar to last year, we found that about half of the population uses nutrition info at least sometimes when eating out at restaurants. Those who use nutrition information at restaurants tend to be between the ages of 18 and 49, college grads, higher income, in better health, or have higher BMIs. This year, we widened our lens on eating behaviors to examine Americans' understanding of their hunger and fullness cues. About 80% of Americans stop eating when they've had enough but not too much, at least some of the time. Still, about a quarter of Americans rarely or never stop themselves from eating when they're not hungry. Overall, Americans aren't spending a lot of time eating dinner. We found that about a third of Americans spend less than 15 minutes eating dinner on an average weekday. Men, and those who report that they are in poorer health, are the most likely to be spending less than 15 minutes. This is important context, given that many messages on healthy eating focus on the importance of eating slowly and attentively. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Sarah Romanski.
Thanks, Liz. We know that consumers are interested now more than ever in what's in their food, and they're seeking a variety of helpful nutrients like protein, fiber, and dietary fats. Similar to previous years, we found that protein, fiber, and whole grains top the list of dietary components that Americans are trying to consume. There are significant increases in people trying to consume quite a few ingredients this year, including omega-3 fats, probiotics, and soy. On the other hand, more consumers are also trying to limit several components in 2016, including high fructose corn syrup, preservatives, and added sugars. Many consumers report changing their opinions on the healthfulness of certain components in the past year. A third of consumers report changing their minds about the healthfulness of whole grains, protein from plant sources, and saturated fats. Overall, those who have changed their opinion on protein from plant sources tend to believe that they are more healthful than they used to believe, and cite scientific studies and friends and family as the main factors influencing their opinion change. The opposite is true for saturated fat, as more consumers now believe that they are less healthful and cite media headlines as the main driver for this opinion change. As a follow-up to the earlier question where we asked people if they were trying to consume or avoid protein, we asked which specific protein sources they were trying to consume or avoid. Poultry and eggs were the top sources cited, followed closely by beans, nuts and seeds, and fish. While beef was cited as the top protein source consumers are avoiding, you'll note that almost the same amount of people are also trying to consume beef. When it comes to including healthy nutrients in the diet, we know there are a variety of perceived and real barriers that stand in the way for many people. We wanted to better understand those barriers, so we asked people why they do not currently consume more protein, more unsaturated fats, and more grains than they do now. You'll see on this slide that in regards to protein, the top barrier cited is the belief that they are already getting enough protein. As health professionals, we know that this isn't always accurate, as many subpopulations need additional protein for optimal health and may not be reaching their needs with current consumption. In regards to healthy unsaturated fats, we see another barrier appear, this one related to knowledge and awareness. A third of the population said they do not consume more healthy fats because they do not know which foods contain this important nutrient. The second top barrier cited is similar to this. Consumers say they do not know enough ways to prepare foods with healthy unsaturated fats. This represents a huge opportunity for additional education on this topic to promote these healthy nutrients in the diet. And when it comes to whole grains, it seems the same barrier as protein exists. Consumers think they are already getting enough whole grains, which we know from data that this is not the case. The second listed barrier relates to enriched refined grains. Consumers don't know what the benefits are. Again, another opportunity for health professionals for communication and education on these important topics. Consumers tend to recognize the healthfulness of components like vitamins, probiotics, and whole grains. Interestingly, more than 8 out of 10 respondents rated vitamin C as healthy, but only 1 in 4 rated ascorbic acid as healthy. Of course, we know that ascorbic acid is simply the scientific name for vitamin C, but clearly there is a knowledge gap there for consumers. We also see a knowledge gap when it comes to the term unsaturated fats. Only about a third of the population rate unsaturated fats as healthy, but nearly 2/3 rate omega-3 fatty acids as healthy. So you can see that terminology plays a huge role in consumer understanding, perception, and probably acceptance of these healthy macro and micronutrients in the diet. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Chris.
Thanks, Sarah. We're all familiar with the stats by now. More than 2 in 3 Americans are either overweight or obese. Recent CDC estimates have it more than 70%.
The answer to what's causing obesity is complicated. We know, however, that weight gain is driven by our calorie intake, and then how much of those calories we burn. Some experts have suggested that the type of calories we eat, as opposed to the amount, could play a role. But what do consumers think? More than 4 in 10 consumers believe sugars and carbohydrates are the most likely calorie source to cause weight gain. You can see this evolving trend since 2011 when we began asking specifically about sugars. And notice the percentage of people over time identifying dietary fat as the main driver of weight gain, which seems to have leveled off around 15%. Consistently over the years, about 1/4 to 1/3 believe that all calorie sources influence weight gain equally. I don't need to remind any of you that there are many opinions out there about nutrition. Everyone has one. We heard from Sarah earlier about shifts in consumer opinions regarding the healthfulness of grains, protein, and fats. Here we're looking at evolving consumer opinions on sugars and low-calorie sweeteners. About half of those in our survey haven't changed their opinion in the last year. Of those that have changed their opinion, 17% of our survey views natural sugars as more healthful than they did a year ago, and 4% made the same shift regarding added sugars and low-calorie sweeteners. About 1/3 believe added sugars and low-calorie sweeteners are less healthful than they used to think, with 12% saying the same thing about natural sugars. We wanted to know if opinions had changed, what information sources were relied upon to inform that change. For sugars and low-calorie sweeteners, it's media headlines, scientific studies, and also friends and family. One good piece of news is found in those viewing low-calorie sweeteners more favorably, where they cited registered dietitians as a top information source. People consume low-calorie sweeteners for a variety of reasons. The most common reason among those in our survey that try to consume low-calorie sweeteners is to help reduce the number of calories in their diet. Opinions about low-calorie sweeteners are split. About 1 in 5 don't agree with any of these factual statements, and almost 1/3 of our sample said they didn't know enough about low-calorie sweeteners to provide an answer. Across the board here, compared to 2015, significantly fewer consumers agree with these 6 factual statements about low-calorie sweeteners. We saw from a previous slide that media headlines were the top driver of unfavorable opinions on low-calorie sweeteners. Studies of questionable credibility with sensational results often make attention-grabbing headlines, while many of the most credible studies seem bland and often go unreported because they align with what science has been telling us for years. This can create the illusion of legitimate scientific debate on low-calorie sweeteners and result in consumer attitudes that conflict with what global authorities have confirmed again and again, that low-calorie sweeteners are safe to consume and that they can be an effective tool for reducing calorie intake and weight management. Now let's take a closer look at sugars. There's a lot of information being put out there about sugars these days, a lot of misinformation too. So how is this impacting consumer beliefs? Only about half of consumers agree that people with diabetes can include some sugar in their diet. A similar number agree that it's not necessary to eliminate sugars from their diet in order to lose weight. The level of agreement seen here is consistent with what I presented earlier about how consumers believe sugars to be the calorie source most likely to cause weight gain. Americans consume more sugars than the dietary guidelines recommend, and many are attempting to reduce their intake. We wanted to understand how people may be approaching this. Of the people that indicated they were avoiding or limiting sugars and low-calorie sweeteners in their diet, 7 in 10 said they are drinking water instead of caloric beverages more often. Far and away, this was the most common response.
And finally, let's shift focus from reducing sugar intake to reducing food waste. I'll kick it back over to Marianne to talk about some food production and sustainability issues.
Thanks, Chris. Sustainability is a broad topic ranging from food waste to food production. Food waste is a topic that many are becoming more attuned to, and a variety of methods can be used to help reduce the amount of food wasted each year. The most common way Americans tell us that they're reducing food waste is with leftovers, either taking home doggy bags from restaurants or using or freezing leftovers. Advanced planning is also a popular action that people are taking. Consumers see making shopping lists and planning meals as effective ways to waste less food. No matter how hard we try, some food waste is inevitable. Our survey indicates the top contributors to food waste are related to perishable foods, with people either forgetting about these items before they go bad or purchasing too much fresh food initially. Interestingly, 30% of consumers responded that they don't believe they create any food waste. Sustainability is viewed differently through the eyes of consumers, but as noted earlier, the number of Americans reporting sustainability as an important impact on their purchasing decisions increased significantly this year. This is consistent with the finding that nearly 75% of Americans think it's important that food and beverages be produced sustainably. Specifically those that are college graduate, women versus men, Americans over the age of 50, or those in better health. When addressing the aspects of producing sustainable food, 4 out of 10 Americans focused on the environmental aspect, citing conserving the natural habitat and reducing the amount of pesticides used as the most important. The social responsibility factor, ensuring an affordable and sufficient food supply, was of importance to over a third of the consumers. What we say and what we do are not always consistent, but this may not be the case for sustainability. When asked if consumers would pay more for foods and beverages that are produced sustainably, the answer is split. 38% say yes, significantly those who are higher income, college educated, or in better health, while approximately 1/3 are not sure and 28% say no. Interestingly, 41% stated that sustainability did impact their food and beverage purchasing decisions. Based on the findings that we shared today, what have we learned? Registered dietitians and nutritionists are the top trusted source for nutrition and food safety issues, with nutritionists slightly higher. However, we don't know how consumers identify nutritionists, hence the value of us being identified as RDNs, and validates the need for us to work together with all health professionals. What is our call to action? With the recognized trust comes the responsibility to understand the science, be credible, and communicate information in such a way that brings about understanding, not fear. in 2016, as in previous years, we see those with higher income and education levels are more likely to embrace the current dietary guidance. However, there is an opportunity for us as health professionals to help consumers cut through the clutter and the confusion. We must create new strategies that will respect consumers where they are, empower them to make small positive changes, and recognize that small step forwards are victory for all. Thank you for joining the webcast today, and for more details of the 2016 Food and Health Survey, be sure to check out our website at foodinsight.org. Thank you.